So, welcome to the first ever public policy series that we are starting now. This is focusing on personalities and individual as well as systems and organizations dealing with public policies. I'm delighted actually to have Ms. Manjari Jaruhar. She's retired as the Special Director General of the Central Industrial Security Force (CISF). She's the first 5 women IPS officer and first women IPS officer from the state cadre of Bihar. And most recently, she's famous for her book Madam Sir, which has been a best-selling book by Penguin. And I'm really delighted first to read the book with so much of interest, her personal journey to become an IPS officer and retain the positions that she has been. Second is also about her transformational change that she's bringing about to people around her, and that's something that is amazing. And welcome, ma'am, to the series that we are starting now, and very happy that you're the first personality that we are interviewing here. So very thankful to you. I know that you are presently now advisor to the Tata Consultancy Services. You have also received the Government of India's Police Medal Award for Meritorious Service and President's Police Medal for Distinguished Service. So thank you so much again. Let me start the conversation with understanding the background in which you started to write this book and what motivated you, because you were so engrossed in service for all these years, 35 years plus. How did this whole idea came about? And
Thank you, Anjal, for having me on this show. I'm delighted that you decided to start your series with me. I hope I'm able to reach the goals which you have set out in this series of podcast. I thought of writing this book many years after my retirement. I retired in 2010, and I never ever thought that I should write any memoirs, but my brother went after me, which I have also written in the book. He kept on insisting that I should record my memoirs because he felt that this will impact and encourage a lot of women to aspire for higher things in life. And then the chorus of write a book also went along with my sons. They also started saying that you have done so much in life and achieved a lot. Why don't you record for the rest of the family and also for friends? And I never thought that the book will have such a wide audience. It has been a pleasant surprise, but I started in a very small way because my brother wanted me to write and my children wanted me to record my career. So that is why I recorded. That was the inspiration, as you would think. But once the book has been published, it's gone beyond my expectations.
yeah, and so that's an interesting point, because one is that you have lived in these experiences, but I also found that this is a very honest account. When you read the book, you actually see the honesty, in each and every incidences that you have made it. So this part is something, most of the time the memoir also are sometimes politically loaded or ideologically loaded, but you had put the incidences, events without much of a political bias or otherwise the biases. So the sense of right and wrong is so clear for me when I read the book. Where did you get this? This is also very interestingly coming from your services, from the record that you have. How did you get it? How early was it for you to understand that this what is right, what is wrong, and how do I put it in a very neutral way?
That's an interesting question. Um, I think that when I started writing this book, I started writing this book almost 12 years after my retirement. I retired in 2010, and it's only in 2022 that the book has been published. And after my retirement, I thought that whatever notes I had, whatever inquiry reports I had done, or whatever paperwork I had sort of destroyed everything. Meant I felt that what is the need for carrying boxes and boxes of your police files, and there will no be any need. And I never ever thought that I will write. So I disposed of everything. So many people have asked me that how is this an honest book? It's honest because whatever I've written whatever impacted me on my memory. So when I record from memory, I have recorded whatever I have felt very strongly, very passionately about. So there is no writing things which are irrelevant or trying to embellish the incidents by making addition or subtraction. It is as the incident took place. And the sense of right and wrong, I think it was ingrained in my character very early in my career when I was living with my grandparents. I think they went out of their way to make sure that they were bringing me up in the right manner so that everything was correct with me. So there was a lot of pressure when I was growing up that I should do everything in the right way. I should not behave unlike a lady should behave or unlike a girl should behave. So the clothes should be proper, my behavior should be proper, the way I talk should be proper. So that I think also came with a sense of doing the right thing and avoiding to do the wrong things. So that was ingrained as a child. So when I grew up, I carried that same feelings ahead, doing only what was I considered was right and what was wrong. And I think it stood me in great stead because the kind of job which I started doing, the sense of right, wrong, moral values was very important, and it gave me good dividends, I think.
Hmm. That's interesting. And I'm just taking slightly backward in terms of in your growing up years, and you write, with a good amount of time that you spent with your grandparents, especially the nanas and the nani that you have grown up with. And we know that your father is also a literary person, has been into writing, but I didn't see much of an account. I just actually was slightly curious to know a little bit about your father and his personality, his background, and your mother's, a little bit about your father and mother.
My father, in my growing up years, was really not very interested in our upbringing or involved with our upbringing. It was my mother who was very particular about the kind of education we should have. She insisted that we should go to a convent education because in those days that was valued a lot, English education. So she was always very concerned that we were three sisters. So the emphasis was on our upbringing and making sure that we had all, as you would say today, ladylike qualities. So that kind of grooming was there. My father was very much involved with the politics of the time. He was very much involved with the village from where we came and the politics of the village, or looking after the village because they had a zamindari, as you call, of those days. So they were very involved. So frequently he would go off to the village and to manage the administration or manage things. It was a very politically oriented family, so there were people contesting elections, etc. So my father would go for that. My mother would also go, leaving me with my grandparents. But that was the background. It is only later on in life, it was my father who would take all the major decisions in the family. It was not that my mother, who came from a very different background of being properly educated and all, but she never had, she was accepted the decisions which her husband took. And all decisions about us was taken by my mother, but major decisions about where we should go to study after finishing school, or what should happen about our marriage, and where the marriage proposals will be taken, all those decisions were taken by my father. So he had a presence in our life, but not in our early life.
Okay. And a little bit about your parental grandmothers and father, grandmother and father. Where were they?
My
Yeah, your dada
patern.
and dadi, where
Huh.
were they?
My grandmother died when I was only 3 years old, I'm told. So I have no memory of her, a very faint memory that she was there. But my grandfather used to stay with us, and he was a towering, literally figure. But at that time, we did not know that he was so well known. And frequently he would be going to give lectures in the university and all, and we would hear that he spoke for hours, and how the crowd was clapping all the time, and how his lectures have been well received, etc., but we never heard any of his lectures. Similarly, in the house, there were students coming all the time. In the evening, he would be sitting in the veranda and giving talks, and if he went for a walk, students would be following him to hear what he would had to say. But as girls, we were never involved in that part of his life. We only saw him as a grandfather who was old, and he was staying there. Later on, when I read his books, And we were not encouraged to read his books when we were
Was he a
children.
teacher or?
No, he was not a teacher. When I'm seeing him, he's already plus 70, and that is the time when his creative work was at its peak. And he was mostly going to universities and all, and was constantly getting invited for lecture sessions, etc. So, my grandfather, I have seen him like that. Later on, when I read his book, he was also a very saint like figure who was not involved with day to day working management of the house or anything. But when I read his books, I realized that the description of a party, or the description of the emotions of a woman, or the description of relationship between a man and a woman, how well he understood and how well he had depicted, and the way his language was so rich. So it was really an enlightenment for us to read his books.
Wonderful. That's very nice to know. So we'll slowly get into the your growing up year, from the growing up years to when you were young, and you were trying to get admission in the colleges, and those things is already documented. The point that I want to make here is the transition that you had from the broken marriage to the selection of being a IPS officer. This just give us a little glimpse of how what was going behind you. I mean, you broke some of those glass ceilings, and what was going internally, because it must be a turmoil, it must be a difficult time and less support for. And that time we are talking about 70s, right? It's
Yes.
2022. How was it internally for you? What was it?
So, when my marriage did not work out and I finally came home, uh, it was not my decision at that time to break from everything. I felt that, okay, I have been married, it is a bad marriage, but it is my duty to make that marriage work. So I tried very hard to do things which would help to make the marriage work. But when I was finally returned from Moscow, because they were not ready to accept anything, and I felt that perhaps things are not going to work out at all. My making an effort was like doing something on deaf ears. So when I came back, I was still a little confused. But one thing I was confused about what steps will happen about my marriage, but I decided that I should now take charge of my life. I have written that, I've used the word charge of my life. I decided that I have too often allowed other people to decide what I should do and what I should not do. And one being my father. I wanted to go and study in Delhi. He didn't allow me to go. He insisted, I didn't want to study English literature, but he insisted that I should study English literature because it was only in a all girls college. He didn't want me to go to a college where there were men. So these were very harsh decisions. So I was doing things only just to go along with the family tradition of listening to your parents and listening especially to your father. So now there was a kind of a rebellion inside me that things are not working, so I will not now allow this to happen. And I took a bold decision, which I look back, I don't know what was the strength that came to me, but I decided I'll take the civil services exams. And I thereafter, once I had taken this exam, and initially my parents were very apprehensive about leaving me alone in Delhi for studying. But when they realized that I was so determined and I don't want to return to Bihar, and I thought that if I return to Bihar, it will be again that, oh, this is what has happened to her, why it had happened, and the same conversation will start. And I wanted to have a clean break. So I stayed on in Delhi, and I really worked hard to take the civil services.
Yeah, that's and then rest is history, because we know the account has been very accurately and beautifully put in the book. And I encourage all my listeners and the readers, viewers, to please buy a book if you have not read it. It's a very interesting account. It's a moving account. In fact, I cried 3 4 times as I was reading. I've controlled my emotions in the class yesterday and in today also, because it doesn't look very good to burst out. But it's, I think, the because the account is so honest that you actually get involved with the character in the book. And because it's a living character that we know
Thank
it's not a
you.
fictional, it
Thank you.
becomes very emotional at some point. That was an interesting conversation, Manjari ji, before you joined the services. In the next episode, we'll be looking at what happened to her after she joined the services and the fabulous journey that she did.